Welcome everyone to Build 39 Part 1. So this is another Caselabs build, and we actually have quite a few more Caselabs builds to come because a lot of customers had us buy up the last of the Caselabs cases, so they're going to be around for a while at Singularity Computers yet. And coming up soon, we're going to be doing something we certainly haven't done before to Caselabs SMA8. We're going to make the most of the last of these Caselabs cases. So this is the Caselabs Mercury S8, and you can see that we've done a two-tone paint job on this one, a white pearl and a charcoal metallic. So the white pearl is a white base coat with a white pearl over the top, so it's quite subtle, but in real life it's actually a lot more vibrant. The camera just never seems to pick up the pearls and the metallics. Charcoal metallic is the darkest metallic that you can get, and it kind of has a subtle hint of gold but more silver in it, but is definitely a lot more noticeable than the pearl. I think this build is a rebuild and upgrade because the customer sent us all of the components, and some of them were pre-assembled, some of them were brand new. But we're going to be doing a bit of an interesting layout in this one because the case has the option for the two windows, the one on the front panel on the left when you're looking from the front, and also on the top panel on the left. So this means that we can't put two 360mm radiators at the top, which is probably what I would normally do in the S8, because then you can also fit a 240 or 280 at the front, but you can also fit another 360mm radiator on the side, and that's the position that I'm going to be using in this build, the side position and the one above the CPU area, because two 360mm radiators is more than enough. And this is just the great thing about Caselabs cases, is the radiator capacity. The more radiator capacity you have, the lower RPM you can run the fans and have a very silent configuration. But the layout means that this case is going to have view into the components that you normally wouldn't have from the front, from above, so it's going to make it a little bit different, but it makes the layout of the loop a little more difficult just due to the position of the radiators. So I'm actually going to do the monoblock loop in parallel. The GPU loop will be in series. This is a dual loop system, but it will require one through panel mod to get down to that side mounted 360mm radiator. Now I was planning on using glass tube for this loop, but it's just ended up a bit of a complex loop. There's too many offsets for glass tube. Every offset would mean the use of many fittings to get that offset, and there's quite a lot of bends and just difficult sections of tube just due to the layout. And I think we've used enough fittings already here, even with the difficult sections of tube. So glass tube would have just led to the use of way too many fittings in this build. So I just want to talk a little about tube bending. Now, I always test the tube that I'm using by heating it up to the point where it melts, it bubbles. So I just cut off a 100mm length. I pick a temperature, usually around 300 degrees Celsius, at least with acrylic tube. If it's PETG, around 200 to 250 degrees Celsius, because PETG is so soft, it heats very quickly, it melts really easily. I prefer hard cast acrylic tube. It's just a lot easier to work with, doesn't deform as much, doesn't bubble as easily, because the thing with acrylic tube is, well, any plastic tube, whether PETG or acrylic, to get a perfect bend, it needs to be as hot as possible. I mean, it just needs to fall over when you let it go. The only thing pushing that tube back into its original shape should be the insert that you are using for bending it from the bending kit. There should be absolutely no tension on that tube whatsoever, so that the tube will stretch and form freely however you want it. If you're getting any kinks on the insides of your bends or those lines around either side of the tube when you're doing an offset, you know that the tube is just not hot enough. But getting it to that perfect point, you're getting so close to the point where it melts and you end up with bubbles. So you need to find out exactly where that point is, and it seems to be different with every type of tube. Like all of the tube that I've tried from different manufacturers, I thought there was just PETG and acrylic and that was it. But it seems there's many different grades, qualities, variation of internal diameters, even external diameters sometimes, which you need to be really careful of. Obviously, you always need to check that your acrylic tube kind of works with the fittings, that it fits in there tightly and isn't going to leak. We've tested our tube with all of the 16mm fittings on the market and it works fine. The internal diameter of ours, I'm always using the EK tube bending kit because a lot of people have asked about that. But the sweet spot for most hard cast acrylic tube is about 300 degrees Celsius. You can see I had the tube really close to the heat gun. This is only because I'm really confident with the tube because I've used it a lot. I don't suggest that until you really know the tube well. Basically, the closer it is, the quicker it will heat, but the quicker it will also melt and bubble. Now you can see here that I'm pressure testing the loops, and this is a tool that I will no longer live without. The Aqua Computer Dr. Drop is just absolutely critical because with this tool you can be fully confident that your loops are not going to leak. So you need to pressure test for about 15 minutes, pump it up to 0.5 bar. Do not exceed 0.6 bar according to the instructions, because then obviously you're going to blow off tubes and damage O-rings. I mean, I don't know what would happen. I think that the first thing that would happen though is that you would blow off a tube. You can test it if you want, but it's just great to be completely confident. You know, you can find issues really quickly because you can actually hear them. And if you can't hear them, grab one of your tubes, your 500mm tubes, put it up to your ear and just listen to all of the joins, and eventually you will find it, you will hear it, because sometimes it can be a very slow leak, which is really annoying and difficult to find. But yeah, most of the time the loops will just test fine and you can get on with it with full confidence that you are not going to have any issues. The only reason I'm still using paper towels is just in case of backflow or overflow from the reservoirs while I'm filling the loops.